So we are doing something a little bit different tonight for Tales of Eldura. If you were here for our last session, awesome. If not, um, we at least, I hope that you guys had a great time. We felt like it was a little, I don't know if weird, weird is the word I'm going to go with for now. Honey, are you here?
I think I'm here.
Okay. Find out.
I'm getting levels on OBS, so that's a good sign usually.
I'll keep talking and we'll find out from it. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Yay. Okay, good.
oh, Zeke says, yay. Yay. Thank you. So our last session we felt like was a little weird. And so, like we've talked about in Tabletop for Two before, transitions between campaign arcs can be difficult. And so, instead of an all out play session today, we decided to move the troubleshooting that we would usually do between the two of us between sessions when things are weird to a special behind the scenes slash troubleshooting Tales of Eldura session where we kind of work through some of those things, so that one, so that you have a model if you need it for talking about your duet session and co-collaborating like we've just recently talked about in Tabletop for Two. And two, we want to normalize that sometimes things go a little bit wrong or feel strange or need to be tweaked away from the table. And so we thought the easiest way to do that would be to just
do it.
just practice that together.
Swoosh.
So hope that's okay. Swoosh. Here we are. And we're really excited to have this chat with you all today. So chat, if you guys want to, this would be the session to ask Gareth random questions about himself too, as this will be a very Gareth focused session, because that's where we kind of identified. Well, anyway, we'll get to that in a second. So honey, I'm really hoping that we get some exciting questions for you.
Before we get into that, though, we got to talk about who's sponsoring our stream tonight. So our stream and all of our video content is, of course, sponsored by our patrons who support all of our video creation. You can check out their stuff at patreon.com/GroveGuardianPress. But in addition, our stream tonight is sponsored by Aurora. Aurora is the prequel novella for the Age of Azuria high fantasy series, which explores a magical world that teeters on the brink between light and darkness. In this exciting action and magic-packed series filled with druids, pirates, werewolves, and more, ancient forces awaken and new heroes rise to the occasion. But this time, who will prevail? Find out in this exciting prequel novella. You can go pick it up at bethballbooks.com.
/join.
/join.
For free, if you want to pick it up for free, or you can pick it up at bethballbooks.com too, or wherever books are sold.
There you go. So, session. Oh, man. So what is it about transitions
7
that makes it so
5.
hard?
So I think that when you sit down to prep an arc, that you have a direction that you want the story to go, that it's harder when you're trying to kind of weave things together between arcs to maintain momentum, maintain narrative interest, and maintain a sense of stakes. If we look at film, for example, sometimes we'll just jump ahead and kind of skip over the parts that don't seem to be important. Whereas in a D&D campaign, I think that that's part of it. We don't use summary in quite the same way. And we will do like, okay, for 2 weeks, here's what's going on. And maybe that's what I should have done for your journey from the, for your journey to the city of Tilvane, and just had like a summary. Here's what goes on. You get attacked by this thing, and then you arrive outside of the city. But I think we also want to you want to set up something and give the character something to be thinking about. And so I think it's that tension that's part of it, is maybe we don't use narrative summary, I say we.
Oh no. Frozen. Beth. Our stream is so fraught tonight. It says we're disconnected. You can. Oh. Starting back up.
Should I not hit
Hey,
refresh?
no, we're fine. We're back.
Oh, good. Okay.
Goodness, great.
Sorry.
Okay, we're gonna figure this out. See, I kind of don't think that is. I get that about transitions, but I kind of expected and wanted, some encounters or things to happen kind of on the road. Like we're traveling through hell. We're traveling through the negative planes. It needs to be like, especially this first time. Like, I mean, later on when we're a higher level and we're crisscrossing the negative planes, like, hey, they're Bocephalus, right? Like we just kind of know what's going on. Then I feel like we could do less of we could have more narrative summary for travel.
Sure.
But I definitely think that you're right about that awkwardness between like kind of setup arc, like this is the beginning, this is the end, and then now we're moving into the next thing, and it's kind of like it's almost like you're like feeling your way through a dark room until you're like, oh wait, I am in a circus tent, or I'm in a I don't know, like a cave, like
a hall of mirrors.
A hall of mirrors. Like yeah, it's very much about. It feels that way sometimes. I know that when I DM have a hard time with transitions and I feel like you're easier to DM for than I am too, because I feel like you would be satisfied with like our characters hanging out and going on a shopping spree and talking to interesting people and stuff like that. Whereas I feel like as a player, I'm like pushing.
So Gareth we had encounters. Gareth just banished everyone. Even if they have like +8 to their saves with advantage. Gareth has the lowest save DC ever of a level 7 main character, but doesn't matter.
Lowest save DC ever, but also rolls the lowest.
Yeah, but you have the highest AC ever, so.
Thank goodness. There's several times where.
Also, it should be way lower now that I got rid of your magical shield.
I just use in the morning. I just like zap my shield to be magical because you gave me a magic hammer.
Yes, but is it a +2? Is your shield +2? Am I misremembering?
Shields give +2 to AC.
Right, but was it a +2 shield that you have, or it's just a magic? Is it a +1 shield, or is it a magic shield?
I think it's a +1 shield.
Okay. Well, anyway, so what we're going to do during tonight's special session is figure out kind of not just where awkwardness is coming from in general, but how can we kind of tweak things in the campaign in such a way that is going to be exciting for Gareth moving forward. And so as we were talking about it after our session, one of the things that we kind of identified that was maybe a point of concern is, or at least I feel like there's a disconnect between like the quest that Gareth is on and what Gareth wants as a character. And so if we can figure out those two things and get them to meet, because he is the main character of the campaign, it should be moving in a direction that he wants and is interested in, as well as presenting him with challenges that are interesting to him. And so I think that that's what we should be figuring out.
I think there are two things happening here too, because we talked about how Gareth had achieved the objective that he was after really at the beginning of the campaign, right? Like he wanted to go to Beacon to save Patrick, and he went through all of this, like these trials and this turmoil and crisscrossed Eldura in order to get to Beacon, navigated the fallen city, found Patrick, was driven temporarily insane, and secured Patrick. I think that completing that, I like, now that I'm looking back on that, I remember kind of feeling like, well, I want to keep playing, but it feels like Gareth has accomplished the task that he set out to do. And so I guess I'll keep going because Patrick won't really be safe until Beacon goes back for reasons, even though we have a way to get Patrick out immediately and solve this problem, right? And I think kind of like Gareth as a character being kind of like goose marched into continuing the thing, because I, the player, want to keep playing with Gareth, and like what we're playing is a campaign that was set in the negative planes, or like when that all went down, we were sticking with the Descent into Avernus campaign, which has like this set of things that happens before we freed ourselves. And I think that that's kind of a like the holdover, I think, for Gareth is like having accomplished, not having dealt with a new quest, right? Like he's kind of just, I don't know, doing this thing. I don't know. I think maybe that's where things went sideways for me.
Okay. So then how do we solve that?
So I think that we know that Gareth is following Vulcan, and I think that Vulcan and Vulcan's relationship to the negative planes and how Gareth fits into Vulcan's relationship with the negative planes. Like, why does Gareth... I think Vulcan is the way and the truth, but how do we get Gareth to recognize that his journey forward is tied to Vulcan's existence or non-existence or strength in the negative planes? That's my question.
Okay. And so to like, from a kind of upper level question, do you think that Gareth is interested in answering that question? Does he just want to get Patrick out of there and go home?
Right. And I think that's part of the problem that I'm having with Gareth is I don't know that right now I like Gareth as a character who is staying connected to his deceased wife through a deepening relationship with Vulcan. But it seems to me like that deepening relationship with Vulcan there's not a reason for him to be on the negative plane or bringing Vulcan up or promoting the worship of Vulcan or Vulcan's power or whatever in order to have a deeper relationship with Vulcan. It seems like a really extreme step. It seems like, going from the kiddie pool to the Olympic high dive,
the ocean, yeah,
into the ocean where there are sharks. Yeah. And so I wonder how we could tie maybe Patrick's safety or his wife's salvation or like afterlife or something maybe to Vulcan's position on the negative plane or in the negative plane. I don't know. Maybe there's something there.
Yeah, it's totally possible. And like you had talked about in our last session, I thought it was an exciting idea that or Gareth seemed excited at the prospect of bringing, kind of reviving Vulcan, the worship of Vulcan, and in the city. And so that's certainly a possibility. That's still very different than this sword quest that we have Gareth on, and different from taking on Alessandra to restore the primary temple of Vulcan to the worship of Vulcan. So we have all of those things. And then on the flip side, in our other campaigns, when we've gotten to this stuck point with our characters, we've switched campaigns. And so I think that that would be another thing to consider. Do we kind of leave this? Do we let Gareth kind of chill until Vane for a bit while he does his research, and we brainstorm about what he wants to do, how he wants to do it, and he can kind of develop his relationship with Vulcan, his wife, like give him time kind of in the back of your head to figure those things out, and back of my head too. And do we have you run around as a different PC until we're ready to come back to Gareth's adventure and journey?
I don't know. I mean, I think that it makes sense. I think we would have to either do something like that, or we could, like, I think I could see a path forward where things go faster with Gareth towards his goal, whatever that is, and like close this more. But at the same time, I mean, it's you know, I'm also torn about it because I really like Gareth as like a character and a concept. I think Vulcan is super cool. I think my favorite parts when I'm playing Gareth is when I'm talking about when he's either like smashing and banishing demons or devils. That's super fun. Or when he is trying to explain or practice his relationship with Vulcan. Like, I think it's really fun to, you know, like have him explain to someone how the work that he's doing or the craft is, you know, an act of worship, a ritual thing, you know, like I think that component is really cool.
Okay.
And also anytime Tessina does something cute, I think that's another one of my favorite things.
Thanks, honey. I love Tessina. I think she's so cool. So when we originally set up to play the Descent into Avernus campaign, I thought that, and so maybe it's just me misremembering, I thought that you picking like a cleric, and especially like this particular type of cleric and all of these things, besides getting to run around in a cool hell vehicle of whatever kind. But I thought that the thing that would be exciting would be pushing the characters' internal boundaries and their morality. So that's why Gareth has met person after person after person who is kind of pushing him to get out of his comfort zone beyond what he thinks is right and to get him to compromise. Because in the past too, that's from my impression, what you think is really interesting about devils especially, and how they work in the 5e space, that they're all about hierarchy and power manipulation and that kind of pushing and twisting. If we're imagining beings that operate across huge expanded timescales, they kind of have that luxury, whereas our characters usually don't. But in the moment, and maybe it's just the way that I'm playing them, I don't feel like Gareth finds that quite as fun, interesting, intriguing. Doesn't feel like it's a challenge that he wants to be facing. It seems like it like upsets him, which makes sense. Like it should be upsetting, but that feels different than like the quest that he actually wants to be on. And so that's the kind of thing that I want to make sure that we change or put in timeout for a bit until we figure out a different solution.
I think that, I mean, like you mentioned this when we were talking before the stream, but like the bargain with Gargoth and Tessina's soul or somebody else's, right? Like what did you call it? Like an unclaimed or
Yeah, it's I think unclaimed soul. I can look back at my notes.
Yeah, something like a soul that was, you know, not already
Free soul.
Yeah, a free soul. like I thought that that was an interesting moral quandary. Like, you know, do you destroy and obliterate these several unknown souls, or are you an active participant in damning this one soul to further your ends? Like that was an interesting moral quandary to me. I feel like when I feel like sometimes when Gareth is meeting these enigmatic characters that are you know, maybe sizing him up, but they feel to me or to Gareth so like closed off and mysterious and unknowable that it's almost like I don't even know what game, not I know we're playing D&D, but like what game they're playing, or like what is
Mm.
the question here, right? Like what is he even being presented with? And it feels like by the time that Gareth has, you know, muddled through the interaction and, you know, like either, you know, and made a bad impression or has grown frustrated, and, you know, like by the time it's like those bad things have happened before he can figure out, or before he knows what is the question that's being presented, or what are the stakes, you know?
Mm. And see, to me, the negative planes, because they're not exactly hell, they're like more complicated than that. It's not
Yeah.
just an equal space, it's an infinitely expansive space. And so the entities and beings who have made that their home are necessarily enigmatic because they're not going to be like anyone that Gareth has encountered before. And so they are playing a different game, if it's even a discernible game. Even if their lifespan is only 100 years, he's in a completely foreign environment where he doesn't understand or know any of the rules. And the game might just, I mean, the game doesn't necessarily have a deep resonance, or perhaps it does, but they're trying to figure out if Gareth can help them or not, as they live in a super dangerous environment as well. And so I think that that's been part of the problem. So then I'm not sure how. And what does Gareth want? What does Gareth want to be doing when he runs across people instead?
I think he wants to know. I mean, like, I feel like it's one thing for somebody to, um, I think it's one thing for somebody to be sizing him up or trying to figure out how Gareth could potentially be helpful to them, but it feels like another thing to, like, um, to be so enigmatic and unknowable that there's no, like, I don't know, path forward. Like if both parties are kind of like, because Gareth is freaked out, he's in the negative planes and, you know, totally out of his environment too, and so if both
Mm-hmm.
parties are kind of like standing at, you know, standing socially distanced, sizing each other up, not saying anything, then I feel like that leads to frustration. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. And I think that too, that one of the things that I do want to see with Gareth's character arc is that he figures out a way to interact with other people and like to have that be a more positive experience. Because like
Mm-hmm.
I've had other D&D characters that would be like, oh well, that's strange, well here's what we're doing, and how do you fit into that? And, you know, like they're more, I mean, Gareth is probably the most closed off, or like least socially adept character I've played. Do you think that's fair?
I would say maybe least flexible.
And I think, you know, I'd like to see one of his, because he is flexible. He can be flexible, like with the Tessina thing, and the shield, and like we can get there. He's less in playing him. I've discovered that he's less flexible than I initially thought.
That's fine. So Gargoth had run around with Gareth for a long time before he discerned this particular weakness and bided his time until he found that moment. But Gareth is interacting with people who he needs their help, but they don't need him. So to be inflexible in that environment when you need the other person and they don't need you. So like if we were talking about the hero's journey earlier this week, if you take the hero's journey, the hero goes into the foreign land, and the foreign land maybe is scary or unknowable or whatever, but doesn't necessarily need the hero to come in and save the day, or isn't interested in the hero coming in and saving the day. And what?
Yeah. Somebody needs to tell Gareth that he needs them way more than they need him.
Evelyn already told him.
He wasn't in a place to listen.
So does Gareth need a timeout for a bit? And we'll come back to him.
I mean, what do you want to do? I didn't think that that's what we were talking about doing, but I think that's an option.
No, that didn't occur to me until we've been right here. That idea didn't occur to me. I want us to be able to play. And so it's really kind of a question of how we want to make that happen. So I still need to know. I wrote down some things. I feel like there's been a dissonance with the emotional part of the campaign. I have things set up in the negative plane. So Evelyn has a mission. I get Gareth spent towards Vulcan and Melina. The overall quest, I get all of those things. I think I need to understand as a DM the challenge that Gareth actually wants, because it feels like the challenges that he's being met with aren't landing or resonating with him.
I've been thinking about this. I want to get an idea before I lose it, though. So maybe the next time we play, I mean, because like we do, like in our other game, your character Persephone is like a chosen of Cassandra, the goddess of fortune. They have a more intimate relationship. I don't imagine Vulcan like, Gareth, I'm gonna come hold your hand, right? Like, there. But I do feel like we need to figure out a way, even if it's just Gareth kind of monologuing an experience that he's having while he's concentrating on Vulcan or something. Like, I feel like we need to dial that part up, and for Vulcan to help him see how Gareth's relationship with Vulcan and Gareth's relationship with Melina, but also the party and Patrick, and like a Vulcan push. Yes. How those things are connected. I think that would do a lot to kind of give him the insight, or like the understanding, the capacity to better recognize what kind of situation he's in.
So can Gareth cast Commune?
Yes, I think so.
So has he wanted to cast that before?
I think I did that one time. A while ago. It was Wheel or Woe,
I remember answering
maybe.
Questions as Vulcan.
It's like a divination thing. Yeah.
Yes. You're trying to decide if you should go to Tilvain.
Yeah, it was divination. That was it. So we'll do some more of that.
Okay. So what does Gareth care about?
I think he mostly cares about Patrick, and he cares about the memory of his wife. And I was thinking that an interesting tension could come about where he's forced to choose, right, between either the memory of his wife or his living son, or um following on this path for Vulcan, or because he also has loyalty and love for Evelyn and Tessina as well. So like
Mm-hmm.
if following Vulcan, if he thought, maybe it isn't even the case, but if he thought that following Vulcan and being loyal to the party were at odds, then that's a really interesting question. What's he gonna do with that?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that looks like from like a narrative standpoint or anything, but I'm spitballing.
Yeah, I get that. I don't want it to be a thing where we're falsely manipulating the things that are most important to Gareth to try to convince him to care. If he, if what he wants, he's actually already achieved and that he's set. So it's like the only way to get him to latch on to his quest is for him to think that his wife's soul is somehow suddenly in jeopardy, or that Patrick is less safe than he's already kind of in a tenuous. I mean, he's in the negative planes on a floating city that's chained to the surface of the earth.
Pretty bad already.
Not so good. But if it takes pushing either of those buttons, then maybe Gareth is set with where he is. Because I think the question to me that is interesting, that is especially interesting about Gareth is, I don't know how much he actually likes Vulcan. So he's in this situation. He follows Vulcan in memory of his wife. How important is it to Gareth that Vulcan's sacred temple has been stolen away from him?
Well, I don't know, but like another one of the things that like he kind of discovered or got into Vulcan and an understanding of Vulcan due to the memory of his wife, but it's also like he's been worshiping Vulcan his whole life, right? Like through his
Mm-hmm.
work, like that's really how he's practiced.
Okay.
So if I don't know, like I think that there could be a connection between his entire working life and those things as well. I don't
Okay.
know how
And
his
what would that
entire
be?
working life, is connected to a fallen temple of Vulcan in the negative plane. I don't have those answers. But those are buttons that we could push if we wanted to push them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like maybe Gareth's powers vanish.
That sounds good. You know what Gareth hates doing? Casting
Surprise!
awesome cleric magic. Hates that old banish spell.
You only get to keep banish.
Deal. It's the
And we'll
only
give
one I
you some
need.
smites.
Um so yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, and they're also like it's a one-on-one game, and so
Mm-hmm.
I think we've generated some ideas about conflicts that we can explore with with Gareth.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, like, he can work out some of those things too, like through other conflicts as well too, right? Like it doesn't necessarily have to be,
Mm-hmm.
you know, Vulcan needs you to do this thing and took away all your powers.
But see, that feels just as dramatic to me as, oops, your wife's soul is suddenly in jeopardy and only you can do something to save her.
No, I think it's dramatic in the right ways. I'm not saying it's not.
Mm.
Or is it too dramatic? What is the face?
I feel sorry, that's me saying that I think that they're too dramatic, perhaps. What is Gareth like? Gareth needs to me, I need to better understand his why. Because right now his why isn't in jeopardy. we can jeopardize it, but it feels like a false manipulation, especially after he's just gone to all this work to save his son.
I saved Patrick. Patrick has been kidnapped by Alessandra, and
His
she's
parents are
holding him.
dead.
Patrick kidnaps. Wait, Patrick kidnaps Alessandra.
Patrick kidnaps Alessandra.
Takes her to Vulcan's temple. The climax is that Gareth has to give Evelyn and Tessina to Lich Lord Patrick in order to free Vulcan, who is actually his dead wife.
Well, who would you pick?
I guess we're going to have to find out, because that's a great Vulcan as his dear wife, whose name I always remember.
Melina.
I always get nervous about saying Melina because I always think that it's Drago's wife from our Land of Vampires campaign.
Her name is Elena.
Elena. I don't know why I got confused.
I didn't name Melina.
I know. That was me.
I'm responsible for Elena.
I think Evelyn has a good arc too.
Yes.
So she knows what she wants.
Evelyn has stuff that she wants to do down here. She knows what she's willing to do to make those things happen. Cena is happy to follow Gareth around. She's having a great time.
See, I think the problem is too, like Evelyn's quest. So we were talking about, like, to me, the potential for pausing in Tilvane feels a little bit problematic because Evelyn's not going to stick around for Gareth to work out his whatever in Tilvane. She's going to be like, all right, you're here. Okay, bye. She's going to bounce to...
She's waited for 100 years, so she could chill with Gareth for 2 weeks. She was kind of if they were never going to go, then she was going to leave. And she's kind of flighty anyway.
If I flake, I flake.
I mean, she's putting the party, as far as she's concerned, she's putting the party in danger in part. And wasn't super interested in doing that.
Do you have plans for, like, what is Azriel annoyed or threatened by Gareth's continued presence on the negative plane?
I can't tell you.
I mean, does that factor into our deliberations for what's going on with Gareth? And
Are you being followed by an assassin?
Currently, yes.
Somebody's threatened by your presence there.
We just need Tessina to keep upcasting Magic Circle until we catch him.
Yeah, so your assassin's not going to step in that circle. It's been hunting people for thousands of years.
You think he knows about Magic Circle?
Before. Yes. You can turn invisible at will. I think it knows about Magic Circle.
What about our dastardly plan? What if I rolled a d20?
Nope.
Such a mean DM.
Honey.
No.
I'm feeling.
No. So, where do we go from here?
I don't know.
I mean, do you have ideas for us in Tilvane? Tilvane looks cool AF.
I think that Tilvane is cool, but Gareth has to be willing to play ball, or I need to rewrite how the city works and what they're interested in interacting with Gareth about.
I think between a Vulcan push/nudge and Evelyn being like, hey, dummy, you need them more than they need you. Figure it out.
Hmm.
That we can get along until Vane.
Okay. And then what?
And then the other things that we talked about, right? Like,
Okay. But what kind of, so this, I still don't know like what kind of interactions Gareth is interested in having. What's he trying to achieve on a personal level? Because these are all external quests and goals. So what is Gareth trying to prove to himself or figure out? So if you had to identify like what is the thing that Gareth needs versus what does Gareth think that he needs? What are those two things? So bringing up the Persephone being the chosen of Cassandra, for example, there was a long gap between Persephone becoming the chosen of Cassandra, being chosen by Cassandra, and Persephone choosing herself and understanding and accepting that she's the chosen of Cassandra. So, what is that for Gareth? He thinks that he needs to do this thing for his wife who's deceased. He wants to take care of his son in this particular way. What does he actually, so what does he think that he needs versus what does he actually need?
yeah. So I think that what he thinks he needs is to hold tightly to familiar things, or like family maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe what he actually needs is to understand that he needs to let it go.
Just figured out a really cool thing and I need a second to write it down. I'm not going to tell you what it is. And then while I do, why don't you sing Let It Go for everybody?
I
Just kidding. You
always
don't have to.
let it go. We have some nieces that are excellent at singing Let It Go, and I don't think it's possible for us to sing Let It Go, and it's not possible for me to sing Let It Go in a normal way after having heard the most uninhibited gutsy rendition of Let It Go, complete with a cape. There's arms flailing.
Running.
There's running. Yeah, lots of running. A good foot stomp every now and then. Yeah. In lieu of singing Let It Go, I'll just take a moment to talk about something else, like at D&D
Okay, how
Club.
about this?
Oh, hey.
So, if Gareth understood that so this is something that's already happened in our game, and I think we just didn't take the time to kind of sit with it. And so maybe this is where we open as we kind of pan forward in our next session, or at least this is where we're stopping, where we're landing. What would it mean, or what would Gareth think that it meant for the temple, like the holiest of holies, holy temple of Vulcan, to have been taken away from his deity and overcome by a dark goddess?
So sorry. So the Discord went
This
kind of
already
like
happened.
a
Of
little
course it
blip.
did.
Um
Okay.
so this has happened. What would it mean to Gareth with our sudden realization about what it is that he thinks he is that what we're talking about?
I'm saying if Gareth had a chance to think about what does this mean, if someone were able to clarify for him, oh, this place hasn't just been renamed, Vulcan's presence is no longer there. What other ramifications might there be for that?
So, I mean, that would feel like a huge loss and a blow, right? If you're leading me somewhere, I need you to take my hand.
He did.
Do it more.
Okay, so what would Garrett think has happened to his wife's soul if, when she died, Vulcan no longer possessed his own temple?
Yeah.
And the
So
sacred space that Vulcan occupied was of Vulcans.
then it seems like she would be potentially in jeopardy, right?
And who has Vulcan been communing with and talking to? Like, where is, not Vulcan, who has Gareth been talking to and hanging out with? And whose power has he been using?
Ooh. I mean, I still think it's Vulcan, but Gareth might be freaked out by it.
Where is Vulcan?
Where is anybody? Yeah.
Okay, do you feel better?
Do you feel better?
Yes. So when we play next week, I think that, yeah, so what Zeke is saying is that even Vulcan, who's been guiding Gareth, maybe it's been Azriel, maybe it's been Alessandra, maybe you have manifested powers and are secretly a sorcerer. Something else? I don't know.
I was thinking too if Gargoth was still around. Just like
Mhm.
Gareth's running around thinking that he's got these magical powers and it's just Gargoth casting stuff on his behalf.
I mean, Gargoth isn't gone. He got what he wanted.
um yeah.
So we can start at the All Faiths Temple instead of having Gareth try to convince his way into Sylvain. Evelyn might do that for him, and we'll kind of spin forward a day or two as you fly over there. Um, and then Gareth can find out. We'll open with Gareth finding out at the All Faiths Cathedral, not to ruin the moment for anybody, but we'll open with Gareth finding out that it's not just a rumor,
Like the
that his
extent.
deity, yeah.
Because I think Gareth hasn't been thinking about it as like this is gone. This is something else now. What was
Mm-hmm.
there isn't just like, oh, there's a spark. It's extinguished and there's something else on top of it. Like, he hasn't really thought of it like that. And so I think that would be pretty heavy.
Cool.
Yeah. Ah, I think we cracked it. Thanks, baby.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It feels
Thank
good.
you, Zeke. Thank you, chat. I'm glad we got that figured out.
Yeah, it feels good to like feel like I think Gareth is super cool, but I haven't
Mm-hmm.
done like this much dedicated work on him and what he wants. Really? Outside of like initial character setup. And I think it's good to it's almost like checking the oil, right? Like you need to I think it's probably a good practice to like maintain and check on your characters. I know that you do this all the time intuitively, but for me, it's helpful to have the realization that like just because I had him figured out for the first part of the campaign doesn't mean that I still haven't figured out or that his goals haven't changed or that the circumstances around him haven't changed. And so it's been helpful to have this dedicated time to figure that out.
I don't do it intuitively. Like it's on purpose. That's my job as the player. If I don't know what my people want, I can't drive the narrative forward.
Yeah. So starting until Vane next Tuesday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the stories that are the most exciting, actually, the stories that people like that we love, just kind of collectively, are ones of like agency-driven characters. So, like, this will be Gareth taking his fate into his own hands, deciding I'm not reacting to the world around me anymore, even though the forces are a lot bigger than me or my own power, I'm going to be action.
Active. A half work of action.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, thanks, friends in the chat. Thank you to our wonderful patrons who support all of our video content. They just got 2 adventures because we were catching up a little bit. But you can go check out the kinds of goodies that they get for one-on-one D&D over at patreon.com/Grove Guardian Press.
I'm just going to say that our patrons also just got a new adventuring companion class with 2 subclasses. So in addition to the witch and the 5 subclasses that we made for the witches, we made the crafter class there's a weaponsmith and an apothecary, and they're both super cool. I think the weaponsmith is like more powerful than the apothecary, but we're still working on that.
I don't know. I think there's opportunity in the apothecary to. I mean, you're making all kinds of potions and stuff. I think there's. I think they're both awesome, is what I'm trying to say.
We'll find out in the playtesting.
Yeah. But folks, until next time, Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern, I hope you'll join us for Tabletop for 2. What are we talking about this week, honey?
I should know. Oh, we're talking about personalizing campaigns for characters. So.
Oh my gosh.
The application side of what we just did.
It's like this is research. This is all an elaborate plan.
Dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a beautiful night. Bye.